Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Welcome, guys, to this week's episode of Heavy Metal Tones with me, your podcast host, Tony Evans. Before we get into the meat of the program this week, a little bit of a Australian announcement. It may not help overseas listeners to this, but you can always skip past a few seconds if you don't want to hear this. But this, a good friends of mine who are in the band Aces High, the Australian Iron Maiden tribute act, are on a major Australian tour this coming July. And there are still some tickets available for most of the dates across the tour. If you have not listened to my interview with Son, the lead singer, go back and listen to it for the previous tour. This is based on the tour that we missed out on because of the COVID. This is the Legacy of the Beast tour, which I don't know if a lot of us in Australia didn't get to see. Actually, a lot of people around the world didn't get to see, to be honest with you, but us more so, really, because we don't get them here that often. Now, the ticket prices vary. There's not going to cost you more than $50 anyway for a show that will give you hours and hours of absolutely amazing music and pleasure, and to be close to a band that sounds almost, if not exactly like the Legends Iron Maiden, then that is a really good value. So those people that can't get out to the Maiden tour coming this September, then this might be the best option for you. If you are going, this might be a nice appetizer, pre-show delight for you, because these guys have roll into their show passion, power, enthusiasm, and it's not just a tribute band. I mean, Son's personality and vibrancy just comes out on the stage. I mean, I've seen Iron Maiden cover bands that they don't have any energy. This band has boundless amounts of energy, and the tour dates are at the Hamilton Station Hotel on the 5th of July in Newcastle, Wollongong Tennis Club on the 6th of July, the Gold Coast Moe's Desert Clubhouse on the 12th of July, Brisbane, the Back Room on the 13th of July, Adelaide's the Crown and Anchor on the 19th of July, Melbourne's Stay Gold on the 20th of July, Sydney's Bridge Hotel on the 9th of August, and finishing in Canberra, as they should do, at the Base on the 10th of August. I will be putting a link in the show notes on where to get tickets, and I will put those dates in the show notes as well for you. But I highly recommend that you go and grab yourself a ticket. Those that are going to the Canberra show, if you buy a ticket now from the 19th onwards, so a few days ago now onwards, and you get to me at the gig in Canberra first and show me your ticket with the ticket date on it, has to be from the 19th onwards of June. I will then, and you're the first to get to me, you'll get a tour shirt and a drink. That's my promise. So those that are coming from the Canberra surrounds and Sydney, if you're travelling in, I know a few of you are. I know that Callum, you are. definitely. So if you're coming in, grab me first and win a prize. But do come to the show. It's going to be absolutely amazing. Anyway, enough rabbiting on from me. Now we're going to talk about Cirith Ungol. So Cirith Ungol, they're an American band that have really, they've been a stalwart of American hard rock, underground hard rock and heavy metal since the early 70s, to be honest, 71 I think. Their first album, this is the one we're going to talk about today, was released in 1981, and it's very much right in the HMT wheelhouse, right up there. It's got a DIY attitude. It's a little bit lo-fi. It's a little bit clumsy in some respects, but you can feel the very passion for the subject deep within its very DNA. Each member of the band, even though the band is still playing now, although it's in the last world tour, and they did come to Australia and to Canberra, but we missed them because the lead singer was sick. Happens. You can feel it in the passion, and this is what I love about a lot of bands. You know, when you get to their birth, so like Iron Maiden's Iron Maiden, you know, this band, Cirith Ungol's first album, Frost and Fire. You get the first bands, you know, you get their first album, you get the feel of where, because usually, like Marillion's Script Register's Tear, you know, you get the feel of the first album is usually a sound that they have played a lot, and it's a sound that they are the most comfortable with, and then they could sort of usually germinate and grow into something different. Well, they formed in Ventura, California in 1971. They're considered early doom or proto-power metal. I really don't see either of those in this album. I mean, later on, yes, possibly. Most of the lyrics are based on fantasy, particularly sword and sorcery. The name comes from the mountain Cirith Ungol and J.R.R. Tolkien's epic fantasy novel Lord of the Rings, although in the book it's pronounced Cirith with a K, but the band pronounced it Cirith with a C or an S, and it's spelt with a C here, but in the book it's with a K. Now the original members of the band, I'll get to you in a minute. I'll get to those in a minute, but they're heavily rooted in hard rock and psychedelic rock. They have their second album, King of the Dead, is from 1984, is considered more the sort of the birth of doom, and I'm sort of find that, yeah, I don't know. I said to you, I'm not overly not a big believer in that aspect. You have to hear it to believe it yourself, I suppose. Everyone can hear what they want and what they can hear. Now, with this album, Frost and Fire, it's a beautiful album. The cover art is very fantasy, very, if you imagine, you know, the cartoon movie and the comic heavy metal, it's like that, right? Beautiful greens, really brilliant fantasy painting. It's not clumsy at all. If anything, it's a really very well executed cover for a band on a very small budget. They made their own label, Liquid Flames Records, to produce the record, and if you've got any of those on that particular label, good on you, because they're really hard to find. They did release again on Metal Blades and so on. The personnel for this, of course, was the original lineup. So you had Tim Baker on lead vocals and backing vocals. He's still in the band. Jerry Fogel on guitars. You got Greg Lidstrom on guitar synthesizers, EBow, which is like an electric violin, I think, backing vocals and bass, which he's uncredited for. Michael Flint Vuja on bass, Robert Garvin on drums and backing vocals. It's the track listing for it, I'll give you it. It's Frost and Fire, I'm Alive, A Little Fire, What Does It Take, Edge of a Knife, Better Off Dead, Maybe That's Why, instrumental. And if you buy the remastered version, Cirith Ungol Live is on there. Now, most of these tracks sit around 3 to 4 minutes, maybe a little bit longer. The longest one is Maybe That's Why, the instrumental, at 6 minutes 15. So it's not a long album for you to have to jump into and spend a lot of time with. It is it was re-released in on Enigma Records, and then again on One Way Records '95, then re-released again in September 1999 on Metal Blade Records, and there was a bootleg picture disc version limited to 500 copies. But again, good luck if you can find that. There's also a nice Brazilian version, which has the different cover of King of the Dead accidentally on it, which again I'd love to have. It was considered, it got to number 362 in the Hard Rock Magazine's book of 500 greatest rock albums of all time. Some of the critics at the time called it the worst heavy metal album ever made, which I take umbrage to because it by no means, and I am going to say this, by no means would I put this album in a classic heavy metal genre. I mean, you think about the year that it came out, in '81, right? There's a lot of albums coming out around that time. A lot of, new wave of British heavy metal. The American scene was taken off. It was rooted in like Iron Maiden and Judas Priest and Tigers of Pang-Tang and, all those sort of really heavy Def Leppard, all that sort of stuff. For me, this is more your Rainbow, Deep Purple sort of album. It's more of a heavy rock album with a little bit of proto metal in it. Yes, it's a difficult one to categorize. I first came across this album many years ago, sort of on cassette, and I haven't had a copy of it for a long time, and I managed to get a copy at the gig, which sadly they didn't turn up at. It was a beautiful book with all the artwork and poster and signed cut picture and coloured vinyl. It was a really lovely print of the album, actually, and certainly worth sort of grabbing hold of. Now, before we go track for track, I'm really going to talk about this album as its musical sounds, right? It's a real interesting album if you want to sit down and actually dive into its maybe not its lyrical content, because its lyrical content is going to be very much fantasy based, so you're not getting nothing really sort of surprisingly nuanced about that. But what is really interesting is the musical side of it. Now, I'm going to give you a big list of people that it sounds like to me, okay? Now, these people would have influenced them, and I think they've also influenced other people. To me, it has Black Sabbath, Iron Maiden. It has the time changes of a prog classic album. It's every single song will turn on a dime from one time signature to another time, and Iron Maiden do that greatly, and I think they probably are getting that influence from Maiden particularly. They've got a lot of Deep Purple, Blue Oyster Cult. There's Badfinger in there. Definitely some Zeppelin. I hear Jethro Tull going in the background. The Who. It's very heavily bass driven, and some of it actually, because it was released in '81. There's the punk scene bubbling around underneath that I think they were influenced by, because I can hear the New York Dolls, I can hear Iggy Pop, I can hear the Tubes, Alice Cooper, I can even hear Joan Jett and the Runaways. But there's also one band, one particular track, which we'll talk about when we get to the other side. I don't want to give it all away in this now. We get to doing track by track. That it was, when I listened to it again, I thought, hang on, that, and I had to play that, and then the other song that it sounded like, and it's almost note for note to a certain point. They're the influences I hear. I hear a lot of Iggy Pop, a lot of New York Dolls. There's a real sort of low slung, dirty rock and roll feel from this band. They're not. A lot of these genre bands now are so pretentious and so sort of image based. You look at pictures of the band and they just had long hair and guitars and flares and tight jeans, and they just come on and they just played heavy rock, right? They're influenced by bands like Mountain and Grand Funk Railroad. That's what they say. But I hear all these other influences in there. I really do. I hear Johnny Thunders on guitar almost every track. It has fantastic keyboards on it. It's just a dream of an album. And what I love about it is it really flits by quite quickly. And people say that can think as a negative. I don't think it is. I think the fact that you can listen to it and listen to it again, even within a short period of time, is quite pleasurable for me. Because most of my musical outings that I get onto are usually quite long and drawn out, and sometimes it's nice to have that quickness. That's why I like the punk thing. There's that instant gratification, straight into it, no mucking around. And this particular box set that I got has two vinyl, but it also has a lot of CDs on it, and interviews and all this sort of stuff, which I haven't even scratched the surface of yet, which is brilliant. But one thing it does come with is a brilliant song breakdown and the band's insights, to which I will be reading. So some of this is taken straight from that, and so you'll get to understand it. But imagine all those influences in one album. Imagine how good that would sound. As I said, just go over again what I said. Influences, take this in. For me, this is how I hear it. Black Sabbath, Iron Maiden, Deep Purple, Cloister Cult, Badfinger, Led Zeppelin, Priest, Toll, The Who, New York Dolls, Iggy Pop, The Tubes, Alice Cooper, Joan Jett, and one other, which I won't, as I said, it's a surprise when we get to the other side. That's just a few things of what I hear in this album. And I think the band's naivety on this particular product, even though it's 10 years, the bands have been around for 10 years by this point, is what makes it so fantastic. And I know that some bands that I made particularly don't. Steve is quite adamant he doesn't like the finished product of the first album, and that's because the other ones are so polished and finished. I actually love the naivety of the very first album, and when I say naivety, I mean that in a positive way, not in a negative way. Anyway, I'm going to go and wrap up this side for now, and I'm going to come back in a few after these adverts, and we will talk about track for track this fantastic album. And I really hope that you do go and find it and give it a new lease of life again, listeners, because it is a joy for me, and it's a joy to listen to, and it's a real shame that we never got to see it live. But hey, it was a good night anyway. Night Demon were brilliant. So anyway, talk to you on the other side of these adverts. Bye for now.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Hey there, it's Michelle Norris. I'm host of a podcast called Your Mama's Kitchen. When I travel, I'm usually looking for a way to find a taste of home when I'm not at home. And one of the things I love to do when I am at home is entertain. And Airbnb allows me to do that. When I was in California recently, I rented a house that had a great kitchen. And when we were sitting around the table, we're all thinking, we're in someone else's house. Someone could be in all of our homes as well. If you have a home, but you're not always at home, you have an Airbnb. Your home might be worth more than you think. Find out how much at airbnb.com/host.
I'm Sandra, and I'm just the professional your small business was looking for. But you didn't hire me because you didn't use LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn has professionals you can't find anywhere else, including those who aren't actively looking for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role, like me.
In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you'll miss out on great candidates like Sandra. Start hiring professionals like a professional. Post your free job on linkedin.com/spoken today.
Since 2013, Bombas has donated over 100 million socks, underwear, and T-shirts to those facing homelessness. If we counted those on air, this ad would last over 1,157 days. But if we counted the time it takes to make a donation possible, it would take just a few clicks. Because every time you make a purchase, Bombas donates an item to someone who needs it.
Go to bombas.com/ACAST and use code ACAST for 20% off your first purchase. That's bombas.com/ACAST, code ACAST.
Welcome back, listeners, to this second half of this amazing album review for amazing album. I know it might be a good amazing album review. You never know, do you? Hey, of Cirith Ungol's first album. Now, as I said before, this band gets chucked into many sort of subgenres because of their love for fantasy novels and Lord of the Rings, particularly. That does not mean that they write songs about dwarves and dragons, and it's not all that kind of stuff. So if you're a bit like, oh no, I don't want to, I'm not into that kind of stuff, don't let this put you off, because everyone has to start somewhere, and everyone has a passion, and this is their passion, but it doesn't lyrically come across that way too much in this album. It's certainly not going to bear you down with unpronounceable elfin names and unpronounceable monsters, and it's not some great epical quest album. It's just an album that has fantasy elements to it. Yes, the cover was made and painted by America's foremost fantasy artist Michael Whelan. It's called Stormbringer, the cover. It's a beautiful piece of art. Yes, it will. If you were flicking through the records now, maybe even 20, 40 years ago, you'd go, oh, it looks a bit, I'm not into fantasy, I might give it a miss. But I think you should not let that happen. And I'm here to rectify that. Now, I'm going to read some quotes that the band have written in, and then we'll talk about each song. So this is from the album. This is from Greg Lindstrom. All songs on Frost and Fire were written in the 18 months prior to our recording in the winter of 1980. By the beginning of 1979, we had already written Finger of Scorn, Atom Smasher, Half Past Human, Death of the Sun, Cirith Ungol, and a number of other fantasy sword and sorcery themed songs. I remember feeling a little burned out on the subject matter, or maybe I was just being influenced by the bands I was starting to listen to at the time, like The Cars, The Jam, Elvis Costello. See, I said that, didn't I? No. There's a punky feel to it. Much to the consternation of the other guys, you probably don't hear much of those bands in Cirith Ungol, but it was all part of our weird melting pot of influences. I did hear it. Now, that's the first time I read that quote out loud, but that I did hear. I heard that before I read that, and it just justifies it for me. So the opening track is Frost and Fire, and what they said, July 1979, influenced by the late great Fritz Leiber's Fard, I can't pronounce this, Fard and the Grey Mouser series of tales. I might have stolen Fire Divine from a bebop deluxe song, Bill Nielsen. Another big influence on my writing, dual leads from the late great Jerry Fogel. Rob does his best galloping beat, and no, it wasn't inspired some of the obscure Nawabum bands. I think it was, if you ask me. That sound was still making its way across the pond when this song was written. For a while, the favourite pastime of my fellow fancy music employees was taking turns playing that F&F lead riff in different styles, jazz, reggae, country. It was a really quite versatile. And it does, it's quite a versatile song. Again, I don't think I want to go over each lyric, to be honest with you, because I mean, you're not going to get much out of it. It doesn't really help you understanding this song. But the vocal, I absolutely love the vocal on this. I think it might divide people. It again, it's quite naive. Sorry, Tim, I didn't mean to be rude, but it is. But I love it for that fact. In fact, there's a band around at the moment called, one of my favourite bands, called Savage Master. And it's a female singer, strangely enough. It's not a male, but it does sound very vocally in the same lines as this. And it has that. That's why I think that's why I love that band, because I really love this band. And it seems to draw me into that sound, that sort of proto-metal sound. And you know what? I believe when he says that the Gallup wasn't an Iron Maiden, it wasn't influenced by Iron Maiden, but at the same time, maybe they're guarding themselves. I don't know. The next track is I'm Alive. And it says, March 1980, 40 years on. I don't think I've written a better set of lyrics than this. And Tim sings it like he means it. Iconic lead guitar from Jerry. I had a grandiose ideas of writing some short stories about this character, but life intervened. Plus, it's bloody hard work to write. It's great. Now, this is a good song. This has a real sing-along. I find myself singing the chorus, I'm Alive, basically. It repeats 4 times, all the time to myself. It's certainly not the most sing-alongable song on the album, but it's one that sticks earworms in my mind, okay? I'll read you the lyric because he's very proud of it. The opening lyric, anyway. I shiver when I remember the things I have seen. I know the light, I know the night. I've walked with things unseen. I've been a king invisible. I've been the poorest of the poor. I've pulled the mighty from their thrones and laughed at death's own door. I mean, it is a beautiful piece of writing. I roamed the world in search of life. Death followed in my wake. I searched for truth. I want the truth. I learned more than I could take. I've walked the roads of mystery, and it's aged me much too soon. I've paid the piper and paid him well, but he still calls the tune. Oh yeah, you can see why this was one of his favourite lyrics. It's really very well written. And then we get on to again the music itself. There are it's difficult to describe because it has all those influences. If you listen from the first half that I'm talking about, so you will hear guitar parts, bass parts, and it's such a melange. I do like that word, melange. You think melange should come with a side of cream, shouldn't it? And some cherries on top. No. Well, is that blancmange? It's probably blancmange. What if you said that? Oh, I love this album. It's a bit of a blancmange of music. Anyway, we get to A Little Fire. It says here, February 1980. We haven't played this song in 40 years, but I remember playing it to go for a Yesterday and Today at the time type of Y&T, which is a band, stop and start riff for the solo section, played by on my new Ibanez Iceman for the solo. The only guitar that ever got me a job. Walked into Fancy Music in Ventura one day. The store manager called me over, opened up my case. The Iceman spoke to me, and I couldn't go home without it. Thus began my employment at Fancy Music to pay the thing off. I didn't also say this, but they have a Wishbone Ash feel to them, and also has a bit of a 10 years after feel. So there's a lot going on in here. This is a very short lyric. It's only a short song. They feel it made mainly through the instrumental. So a lot of the songs I really enjoy that I will go back to a lot are very wordy. You probably know that by now. I've listened to my show. You know how much I talk about lyrics. I mean, I really enjoy the wordy aspect of a song. Not to say that I don't enjoy a more Spartan musical piece, and I do, because this song here is more Spartan musically than it is lyrically. It's got again a fantastic sing-along chorus, which is just I just want a little fire, and it has that in that little groove. It has a real almost a 60s, very psychedelic-y sound. I think of that chorus as a bit Mamas and Papas kind of thing. Very Steppenwolf. It has a sort of Steppenwolf drive to it. Now, those that don't know who Steppenwolf are, you all know Get Your Motor Running. You know, that is step where the word heavy metal was used for the first time in a song. Okay, heavy metal or thunder. Those that are young to listening to this show and haven't heard that, when you get off this, have a quick listen to Steppenwolf. And then we step into what does it take? So what does it take for me is, it's probably one of my top picks for the album. It's the song that sounds just like, now the band I whispered before that I didn't actually say out loud to you. It does sound like to me like Sex Pistols. It sounds like Submission. Now a lot of people are going to say, I don't know what you're saying. Have a listen. I could not believe the guitar part is so much like like Submission. I don't know whether it was one of those happy accidents. I think it would be, really. I mean, the world was so far apart from each other, and it wasn't easy just to get records. I mean, this was like 1988 one, so like 3 years after the album was released, so maybe, you never know. Now, what they say about it is, the only song on A Frost and Fire that I got to use my trusty Octave Cat synth on, and it was the perfect sound for that snaky riff. The Octave Cat was designed as a clone of the famous ARP Odyssey, but the user interface on the Cat was a lot easier to decipher. Cool bass lines during the verses, if I don't say so myself. Now, great bass line, great synth work. It does fight a bit. It fights a little bit for the guitar. It fights a little bit for the vocal. It's a great sing-along chorus. Again, what does it take? What does it take to get to you? It's a little bit of, coming of age song. I think it seems a little to me about losing your virginity. I think could be. It has that. Submission's about that, isn't it? Submission's about sort of sex clubs and bondage gear, and Malcolm's prediction for it. It was sort of like a joke and play on Submarine Mission. And I think that's what this feels a bit like. That it feels a little bit kinky-esque. It has a little... it's a really great song. It's probably one of my favourite songs on the album, but it does sound like Submission by the Pistols. So, the Sex Pistols. So, do give yourself and have a listen to both and see what you think. I'd love you to come to my page and tell me what you think. Am I imagining it? I don't know. I know that song inside and out. So, for me, I knew when I hear that riff that it sounded a bit like it. I'm surprised it hasn't been mentioned before. And then we get on to if you're going to release a single off the album, and they didn't, but if you were going to release a single off the album, this is probably going to be the one of them, right? It's called Edge of a Knife. Talk about sing-along. Wow, okay. Probably my favourite song on, if this is quoting it, probably my favourite song on Frost and Fire. Sure, the chorus is a little cheesy, but rock and roll isn't brain surgery or aerospace engineering. The middle section reminds me of Fly By Night by Rush. I also see Rob smiling every time I play it. Another great solo from Jerry leading up to the end, which has a 50-50 chance of becoming a train wreck whenever we play it live. Because it does get in a sort of chaotic, smashing finish. And yes, it does sound like Rush. I never mentioned Rush before because I knew that it was going to be mentioned here. Yes, it has a Rush-esque feel to it. Because again, Rush had that fantasy sort of nuance to it. And Fly By Night is one of my favourite Rush songs anyway. So it's kind of a light motif, but has a brilliant, brilliant sing-along chorus. Now, I know that he says it's cheesy, but I'm going to read the sing-along chorus to you. Edge of a knife, edge of a knife. Maybe that's what they mean by real life. And the way he sings it, it's I don't know, it's I keep using the word naive, but it's a glorious, I don't know, it's just gloriously youthful and exuberant, and it isn't crushed by the weight of life. It's music that they genuinely enjoy playing. It's quite wordy. There's a lot of lyric in this song compared to a lot of the other songs on this album, but it is what I would call their hit single of an album that didn't have singles. Again, very sing-along, very jaunty, real as he does. I mean, I must say the bass in this is pretty amazing. Yes, I agree with him. And then we move on to Better Off Dead. Now, Better Off Dead is fascinating because I'll read it to you first and I'll tell you what I think. It says here, I wanted to write a song that I could do a little bass slapping on. Unfortunately, it's not the easiest of things to do on a Rickenbacker 4001. The whammy bar leads were done all on my Ibanez Strat copy, a copy so close to the original that I later replaced the Ibanez neck with a real Fender neck, and it's fit perfectly. So close to the original that I later replaced... got to admire a good bit of reverse engineering. Jerry, again, is brilliant on the fast solo section. This is another song that we haven't played in 40 years, so I guess it qualifies as a deep album cut. Now, I always think bass slapping as a sort of fat, unctuous, groovy, deep tone with a little bit, unless you're doing you're popping off with, slapping is not that pop sound, it's that, but sort of heavy, monotonous, groovy, saturated sound. Whereas this sounds to me, it must because it's played on his Ricky, Ricky's have such a heavy body and such a dense bridge and such a dense neck that and they weigh an absolute bloody ton. And trust me, from someone who's played Ricky's in the past, it's absolute weighs a ton. It doesn't have that resonance, like you do get on a Washburn or a nicely the strings are raised well on a nice Fender for that sound, or a Yamaha or whatever. It's just not really a Ricky thing. And I thought that he was digging in with a pick. Now, I would have said, I've listened to this album for years. I didn't know until I read this quote that it was that he slapped on it, actually, to be honest. And I just thought it was driven with a heavy pick. That's how. I think that's because it's like the other song. The bass slapping is fighting for the keyboards that are in the background, and it's fighting for the guitar that are over the top, and then the vocals are driving, wildly, and it's catchy. It's very, very catchy. The thing that this whole album has for it is it's extremely, extremely catchy. Once you've heard it, you don't forget it, and I would really be surprised if you don't find yourself whistling things like Better Off Dead or Edge of the Knife to yourself. All right, again, this is not a wordy song. Nice good sing-along chorus. I've got a lot on my head and my conditions read. I think I'm better off dead sometimes. Yes, it's childish, it's naive wordplay, but it's rock and roll. Like you said, rock and roll is not brain surgery. This is absolutely fun, and more fun. And then we get to the final song on the album. When I say song, this is, I think, is it the final song? Oh, my lordy lord. Yes, it is. Maybe that's why. That's all me using an early EBO, but in retrospect, I really wish Jerry would have played it on us also. He would have taken it to the next level. We did actually play this live as a full band at least a few times in clubs, and also at one and only wedding we ever played at. And being pretty much the only slow song we know, we had to play this 3 or 4 times that night. Again, it's a dense lyric. It's a small lyric. The EBO is an interesting piece of equipment if you don't know what it is. It goes on the guitar. I'm not quite sure if it's on the neck or behind the bridge. I'd have to investigate that. I've only ever seen one. I've never seen one played. And what it does, when you play the strings, each string then gets sound like it sort of transposes the modulates the sound in such a way that it sounds like it's being bowed, as in EBO. I think Martin Barre from Jethro Tull was a user of it, if I remember rightly. I'm absolutely sure that one of those proggy bands used it. It's either them or, and I think it could even be Godley and Cream. Well, there's a deep cut for you. I think he might have even invented it. Did he? Anyway, do your own research on that one. That's too much for this particular episode. But it is it's a great end to an album. All right, it's slow. It's got a nice dense lyric. It's fun to listen to. The whole album is just a rollicking good time from beginning to end. I highly recommend getting yourself a hard copy of it on vinyl or on CD. Don't always have to get your hands on this anniversary archival edition that I have, but I picked it up at the gig for pennies, I might add. And I'm really, really happy about it. But there's so much information here that I haven't tapped. But when you look at it, as I said at the beginning, don't be afraid, sorely afraid, because it has this sort of, Lord of the Ringsy kind of artwork. If you're into your really heavy metal and you like it, you like it really aggressive, or you like it fast, or you like it heavy, then this may not be for you. But it might be something that you can listen to understand the roots of what you're listening to now, because if, like the band said, they weren't really influenced by obscure new wave of British heavy metal bands, because it was the other side of the world and they weren't listening to that. I'm a little bit skeptical of that comment, but I can see where they're coming from, because this is pre-internet, pre-computer sharing. You got your music through your knowledge through people, your peers, who might have read an overseas music paper that was, by the time it got to you was 6 weeks out of date, and the music industry then moved even faster than it does today, and so within 6 weeks, that particular type of music or that particular album is old news. So you're listening, you get in the newspaper. So the classic example was that in America, they were getting bands like Metallica and things were getting Music Underground newspapers like Sounds, English newspapers like Sounds and Melody Maker and NME, and they were getting it weeks and weeks later. So when they were looking through these coming up albums or releases, reviews, by the time they got the record, as I said, the band had moved on to something else. I mean, bands quite often in those period of time would release 2 or 3 albums in a year, let alone one every 5 years like they do now because of the tour commitments. They used to just make them because they didn't have the massive tour commitments, and they were full of energy, and it was quicker and easier to make a record then, because you didn't have record execs and admin and art directors and 18 different producers and worrying about people took risks, and they weren't worried about the record costing $100,000. Will they get their money back? They sort of took that risk, and I think now people are so risk averse when it comes to music, and it's the same with film. They're so risk averse that they've got to have focus groups, and this is very much an American thing. American listeners, you know what I mean. There are focus groups and endless meetings, and if we spend this $100,000, will we make it back in this particular time, and so on and so forth. And I'm being conservative when I say $100,000, because that's actually a very small amount of money to make an album, even nowadays. So, but you can imagine, they had to pay these bands advances, and they had to book studio time, and they had to book, rehearsal spaces, and all this sort of gubbins that bands now just seem to do themselves, So where I'm coming from is that the connection between this band and, say, new wave of British heavy metal is, yeah, it's there, but it's tenuous. I think it's like the Australian band the Saints. They had this punk sound exactly the same time that Nevermind the Bollocks was coming out. In fact, The Saints' I'm Stranded, I think, is actually considered one of the very first punk songs ever released, even before New Rose by The Damned. And it's weird because it wasn't a sound that the Australians would have even thought of. You know, it's some blessed country here. Yes, it had its troubles in the 70s, but it wasn't like it is in the UK. And they certainly weren't connected to the American sound like the British were then. And so to make a sound similar to the Pistols and have their own and have a punk ethos is one of those wonderful sort of almost surreal and unearthly psycho's the wrong word, sort of paranormal thing, isn't it? Where there's sort of like minds across the world. And I think this is very similar with the Cirith Ungol album, that it does. If it was released in the UK, and this is the truth, it's just released in the UK as part of the new wave of British heavy metal scene, it would be lauded as one of the greatest albums of its genre, of its decade. It isn't, sadly, and it should be, because it is. I keep saying the word naive, but it is. It's naive. It's generous. It's fun. It's fleetingly quick, which I love. It has delicious solos, weird instruments, great keyboard, a vocal you won't forget, and as I said, the sort of, it is like a fine wine, right? It has so many different notes. It's like a good whiskey. It opens up the more times you listen to it. The more times you listen to it, the more you hear. And each of those bands I mentioned at the beginning, so I'll go over them again in case you don't remember. Okay. Black Sabbath, Iron Maiden, Deep Purple, Blue Oyster Cult, Badfinger, Led Zeppelin, Judas Priest, Jethro Tull, The Who, the New York Dolls, Iggy Pop, The Tubes, Mountain, Grand Funk Railroad, Alice Cooper, Joan Jett and the Runaways, and as I said, Wishbone Ash, and 10 Years After, and the Sex Pistols. It's crazy how this album has absorbed, this band has absorbed all these sounds and made their own sound, but being so isolated in the music world of this little place in California. But, you know, coming from a sort of a heavy blues psychedelic sound of the late 60s, because they first started playing together in 71, remember? Just at the end of that hippie era, right, the sort of birth of, sort of right through that prog and glam era, right through the heavy rock revival, right into the heavy punk and heavy metal. They just were there and absorbing, and this is the sounds they got. And like he says, you like the Elvis Costello and the Cars and new wave, much to other bands' chagrin, but I think it blended in there without them even knowing that they were doing it. It's a cracker of an album. I'm going to bring out the old Millsy meter again. I haven't done that for a few weeks, but it's 11 out of 10. This goes right to 11. How loud can it go? Well, it goes to 11. That's what I'm saying it does. It's a pretty awesome album. You can stream it on all platforms. Even the version I've got, the special edition one, you can stream it. Not with the interview discs and stuff, but the music. You can watch them on YouTube. You can go to their website and buy hard copies. And if you're lucky enough, and they're in the part of the world and they're on their final world tour and they turn up in your town and you don't buy a ticket, then I'm sorry, there's something wrong with you. The tickets here were ridiculously cheap. I think it was like $50, and that included Night Demon from America as well. So 2 American acts over here for the first time. Yes, they're not. Cirith Ungol is a big name, but for me anyway. But what a bargain it would have been had he not been sick. The poor bugger got a throat infection just before the gig. I mean, it takes a lot on you touring, and I've never been to this country before. It's a long way to come, and coming from the hot to the cold, because it is in winter here at the moment. So coming from hot to cold, particularly even travelling down the country, if you're up in Queensland top of the country and you're coming down to the bottom towards Melbourne, you're going from very hot, even winter days, to -8s and 9s down here in winter. So, it can shock the vocals. It can make you feel unwell. It's not unusual. I hope he got better, and I hope he finished his tour, and hope they finished their tour strongly, because what a shame to finish it that way if that is the case. Anyway, that's enough for me this week. Get your hands on it, have a listen to it any way you can, and come on to my Facebook page. That sounded a little bit dirty, didn't it? Pop onto my Facebook page. That sounds a bit better, doesn't it? And then leave me a direct message. Come on to the YouTube channel and leave me a message there, or on Spotify or Audible, or wherever you get your podcasts. Pop on there and leave me what you think about this album. And also, am I hearing that right when I say I hear that Pistols submission connection? Because I think I am. Anyway, I might not be, but I think I am. That's enough for me this week. Have a good one. Take it easy. Keep safe. Keep warm. Keep cool wherever you are. Keep rocking. And do please leave me a review, because it really helps other people find my show. And, we're almost 200 episodes in now, and I really want to keep growing the program. So, see you on the other side. Talk to you next week, guys. Bye for now.
Need new glasses or want a fresh new style? Warby Parker has you covered. Glasses start at just $95, including anti-reflective, scratch-resistant prescription lenses that block 100% of UV rays. Every frame's designed in-house with a huge selection of styles for every face shape. And with Warby Parker's free home try-on program, you can order 5 pairs to try at home for free. Shipping is free both ways, too. Go to warbyparker.com/covered to try 5 pairs of frames at home for free. warbyparker.com/covered.
Hi, this is Paige from Giggly Squad, and I want to talk to you about Splash Refresher and my water intake. Okay, so you guys obviously know that I'm a hydrated girly, but sometimes when you drink that much water, it starts to just taste bland, and you're just like, I need something to spice it up. That's why I love Splash Refresher. It has 0 sugar, 0 calories, and it's a splash of sweetness. And they come in 5 different flavors. They're so good. Wild berry, acai grape, pineapple mango, lemon, and mandarin orange. My favorite is the wild berry because I just love a berry. So if you're like me and you're drinking water all day, then try Splash Refresher. It's going to absolutely change your water game, and it's good for you.